Perfect. Perfect. Alright, so I'm just trying to throw this setup back together, and it seems like the studs aren't all straight, so it's a little bit of an interference fit as it goes together, which is fine. It'll mean it's nice and tight and it won't just rely on the bolts for holding it in. So pretty much this was the one that had the piece of weld over it. This is the one that had the piece of weld over it, so I just drilled from this side going back this way with a whole bunch of different sizes until I popped out the other side, and then just flattened out that edge with a grinder. Just need to tighten these up a little bit more, and then I'll tap it all together. And as for those cracks, I'm just going to leave them because I don't care, this car's a turd. And I'm just going to make sure it comes down evenly and that the wastegate flap is up and out of the way and not all the way down. I'm going to get caught like that, So I'll move it up here so it's not down there. Tap it all together, throw some nuts on, then bolt this to the turbo and then to the manifold. And then, yeah, should be right to go. Yeah. Alright, so got the dump attached to the exhaust housing, or bashed onto the exhaust housing rather, so it's quite a tight fit. So hopefully I don't have to take this off. But anyway, these are the nuts that I got from the turbo shop. So I've never seen these before, but they're like a coppery sort of brass looking thing, I don't know. Anyway, they just look like a regular nut, except you see right there's like a pinch and it's sort of on a slope. So it looks like they like cut a chunk out just above the hex and then sort of bash it down to flatten it out. See the pinch over that side as well. So I guess that makes it like an interference fit as you tighten the nut up. So hopefully it won't walk itself off, but I'm presuming these are a one-time use only thing. So I really hope I don't have to take this apart again. But anyway, we'll see how we go. Alright, so there's all the bolts on. I only rounded off a couple of them, but they're all nice and tight. The wastegate works nicely. So just got to throw this O2 sensor back in, just in here, and then start reassembling everything else. But I've got to go out today, so I'll come back and do this later on this afternoon. Alright, so turbo's all back together. So I got the O2 sensor in, all these bolts are tight. These ones are a real pain. I'm really hoping that this is the correct orientation. I'm pretty sure it is. But anyway, so I tightened all those up, so if I need to clock either of these, it'll all have to come back out again. So fingers crossed I got it right. I think the first time I did it, I had none of these hoses on. I put this in, like everything was loose. I put it in, and then I clocked the drain so it faced straight down. Nipped up one of these, pulled it out, tightened all of these, put it back in, put the crossover on, nipped up one of these, and then pulled it out and tightened it all again. So I don't really want to go through that because I'd have to take off a bunch of water lines and stuff, and I'm lazy, so I'm just going to do this and hope for the best. So yeah, let's throw it in. So Roscoe down at TurboTech sold me these bolts studs and nuts to go here to hold the turbo on, and they look amazing, and I would love to use them. They got the same design nut as the other ones I used. However, I can't for the life of me get these out. I don't really want to break them, so I'm just going to leave them in there. It's a bit crappy, but what can you do? Maybe I can use these some other time because they look really nice. Because you'll totally see them and it'll affect the performance greatly. Anyway, so just going to bung these nuts off, throw that on there, bolt it all up, and hope I can squeeze it in the car without breaking anything. Yeah. Alright, here it is, all completed, all bolted together. So it should just bolt straight on the engine with any luck. See all the fancy new hardware and the dirty old turbo with cracks in the housing. It's going to be sick. Yeah, so just line those up, get this water pipe on, get that oil line on, sort that out, done. Oh yeah, and that one there. Alright, so it's just clicked over 4 o'clock and I finally got this stupid thing back in. So it took all bloody day because I was in and out all over the place. And when I put it in yesterday, I realised that the turbo core wasn't clocked properly. I was off by a tiny little bit. So it meant that the oil feed line didn't match up to the block. So I had to pull it back out, which was difficult by myself, and I did a little bit of damage. So when I took it out, I left the manifold in and I just undid these bolts, which was a pain. And so trying to fit it through here was quite difficult. So future reference, the turbo drain will scratch and destroy this. So either disconnect that or just take it off with the manifold, or just don't make the mistake in the first place. So anyway, pulled the whole thing out, loosened all the bolts, put it back in, set it so that it was all bolted together, and that meant that the turbo was correctly clocked. Tightened up one of the bolts, pulled it out, tightened all the bolts, put it back in, tightened everything up. Doing those bolts down there on the dump, and getting the dump itself, the flange gasket sort of fell out, so getting that sorted was fun. Tightening up the bolts for the actual turbo wasn't too bad. That water line back there was a pain. I had to put a new line in because I had to cut the old one to get it off, so it meant I had to replace it. So cut one side and then had to cut the other, wherever it is, there. And then because this is obviously a metric car, because the parts are made in Japan and Australia had switched over to metric in 1988, the hoses are metric. But for some reason, Supercheap, or at least my Supercheap, only sells lines in imperial sizings. This is a 5/16 hose, so it's just a little tiny bit too small, so it does fit, but it's just a pain in the ass, and there's no space back there, so you're skinning knuckles the whole time. You can't even see it, but yeah, it was great fun. So it took me way longer than it should have, but it's all in. So now I just need to put the heat shield on, finally. That's the whole reason I did this, and put the crossover back in and the air box and stuff, and then it's right to be started. I have to top it up with fluids too, because it leaked a few of them out, so yeah, getting closer. Alright, sorry if there's any wind noise, but anyway, time to put the heat shield on. So these heat shields, it's a BL Turbo specific one. They're really hard to find in good condition, so I got this one. It was a bit bent, a little bit cut, but I just hammered it back as best I could, and I also found a manifold with clear bolt holes. So that's probably the most important part, aside from obviously getting the heat shield, is the manifold without the broken bolts in it, because it's a cast iron manifold and the bolts are, you know, steel of some descriptor, so they rust together. You never get them apart, so I've got some anti-seize when I throw these in. Yeah, just got to make sure they don't rattle out eventually, so I guess far out, trying to focus is impossible. Anyway, these ones are the heat shield ones, so they're short, stubby, 10mm heads and whatever that is, like a 6mm body. And yeah, that's what you're looking for. The VL Turbo ones and the NARB30 ones are the same. You just got to get the little stubby ones with the capped off ends, or the flat ends rather, instead of the tapered point or something. Anyway, you throw them in and that'll be that done, and then I can put the crossover in and get it ready to start. Alright, so they're all just nipped up. So there's 3 across the top, 1 at the front, and then this cheeky bugger under here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just there. And the piece de resistance, it's this bad boy. So this is the first time I've ever had an R31 that has had an allowance for the O2 sensor clip. So anyway, it clips in there instead of being zip tied to everything, so it doesn't melt. So it's going to be good. I'm very excited. Let's plug it in and see how it looks. Well, that went super well. I didn't even get to plug it in. I just smashed half the back of it off. There's a big chunk missing there now. So yay. And it's on the side that's widened the body, even better. Well, I'll have to replace that sometime, but for now we'll just clip it on. Well, there you go. Beautiful. Can't believe I finally got one. So that's all together. Now time for the crossover and then the intake. Yeah. Alright, so she's all back together. Just through the old air cleaner line and everything, and the crossover and blah blah. I'll sort it out later. Just want to make sure all this works, so we'll kick it in the guts, top up the coolant. Not too bad about the oil. So let's the first start. See how we go. Sorry about the knocking sound, I'm sure it's something not important. Well, that sounds like a wicked exhaust leak, so good job, too bad. Okay, so it's up and running, but it has a high idle. Not quite sure why yet. I think there's either, I can't find a vacuum leak, but maybe I just have to reset the idle. There's definitely an exhaust leak. I think it's from the engine to manifold setup. That'd be shit if that persists and I can't tighten it out. I've run out of coolant, so it's like 5:30 at the moment on a Friday, so I don't think the parts store is going to be open, so I may have to leave it at that. The oil seems okay. Other than that, it runs fine. So all in all, not too bad. Now I've got a fancy heat shield and enough bolts that there's not an exhaust leak, but ironically it created one. So yeah, we'll just about the end of it. It works. Done. Good job.